So namaste and welcome to Satsang today. So what I wanted to speak about today is really something that an aspect of our awakening that is absolutely pivotal to really understand. And yet pretty much every challenge or issue we have is coming from this, in our awakening at least. And in my own pathway, it was for quite a long time an issue. So it's well worth talking about because it's fundamental. And once it's understood, it's going to really begin to allow you to move on a pathless path much faster from nowhere to nowhere. If we already are the formless reality, if we are infinite instead of a limited separate being, what is it that's taking so long for us? Why is it for some of us our seeing leads to a deep abiding as that and no longer so much living as a separate limited being? And for others, it seems to take a lot longer. What is it that's the difference here between, is it how much practice they're doing or not doing? Is it how worthy they are or any of that? Is that any make a difference? Is any of that actually going to change how fast we come from the point of seeing what we are to living as that? Maybe it's something else that's going on that when we really look at it underneath will help us overcome any obstacle that we come into contact with in our awakening. When I looked at my own journey, when I looked at the places that I got stuck or felt stuck at least, or blocked, it came down to one thing each and every time. And that was that whatever insight or epiphany or realization I had had or seeing, so if I see in my formlessness, I see my every-awareness to whatever degree I can see it right now, the very next thing that happened was that seeing was taken by my egoic sense of self, my separate sense of self, and used to turn into further seeking. Or perhaps clearer said, it was made into a process. So if I have a seeing or a realization that I'm not at all who I think I am, the very next thing that's going to happen for most of us, that happened for me, is kind of my ego or my mind and a separate self, I'm using those synonymously, kind of rolls up its sleeves and goes, okay, how do we make this into something? And of course, it's not happening on a conscious level. It's happening on an unconscious level. It's our egoic sense of self is a kind of forward motion. It's always looking to try to make something into a process in order to sustain itself, not because it's bad or evil, just because that's what it does. So any seeing that I have revealed, anything that I come to understand through a satsang or a teaching or anything at all, any spontaneous insight is going to be made into a process if I'm not watching carefully. So this thing that I've just had revealed to me, or just had an aha moment, my mind then is going to take it into some way to use it to propel itself into the future. So I've seen that I am the formless self, that I am not a thing, that there's nothing substantial when I actually search my being. My body's substantial, my thoughts are, my emotions. I actually try to find me, the one that's supposed to be living in this body. All I find is something insubstantial, intangible and formless. And that intangible formlessness is not in a progress or process. And yet the very next thing that's going to happen then, as happened for me, is how do I get from where I am now to what I've just seen? Immediately, my mind, my separate sense of self, is going to take what's just been seen and try to make it into a process. How do I get from what I've just experienced, me, this separate being, to that formlessness? Or if we tend to encounter someone who's very compassionate, very forgiving, immediately, how do I get from where I am to where that person is? To want to be like that? Or if I've had some seeing that abundance is the only natural state, immediately something inside goes into action. How do I get from here to there? Assuming it's a process. And this, of course, makes sense because we're so, to our ego at least, we're so used to moving through a sense of time and progress and process and change and evolution. We're so used to, I don't have this thing right now. What can I do regularly to get to that future point in time where I will be this quality that I am trying to get to? Or what do I do from here to get to awakening? So if you can see, if you look back at the last epiphanies you had, if you can remember, that epiphany, as important as it is, that insight, that understanding, it doesn't have to be something where, you know, angels come down with their trumpets and there's fireworks. It can just be a simple, you know, an understanding that suddenly deepens. Wasn't clear before and it suddenly is. Very ordinary thing. But it's actually extraordinary. It's insight coming through. And it leaves a mark on the body mind. It slows them down, it calms them down. And it allows them to live as that truth. Unless, of course, the very next thing that happens is we try to use that insight in a particular way to get us to something else. If we immediately say, that's my goal, I want to be like that all the time, and this is where I am now. I'm not here yet. I'm not living as that yet. I want to get to this future point. Implies a process, doesn't it? Something we can do. And a lot of my time spent during my awakening was in a process to get to somewhere. And I never seemed to arrive. And even if I touched upon something momentarily, it was immediately co-opted into this by my ego as a way to prolong and sustain my sense of being a separate someone, moving towards something, moving towards awakening. And it's really all we've ever known. We were an infant, and then we were moving towards our childhood, and then we were moving towards adolescence, and then we were moving towards adulthood. And we're doing the same thing. We're identifying here with the body. The body is evolving. The mind is evolving. But the consciousness is not. So an insight or an understanding or a seeing happens through inquiry, self-inquiry, through meditation, through just some random seeming moment where my attention isn't desperately focused on something and an insight happens. What do we do then? How do we not make that into a process? How do we not set off running down the road towards some future point? Let's say we have a glimpse or an insight into the formless ground of our being, in which everything just is. And I'm not worthy or unworthy, ready or any of that, where there's no separate self even to do anything about. We have an insight, a glimpse of that. And then 2 minutes later, we seem to be back into our usual state of consciousness. What can we do in that moment to not make it into a process? We can simply honor the seeing that we've had, recognizing that I am that already, and that the only way to come to live as that is to by refusing all processes. If I am that already, there's nothing I can do or become that's going to bring me closer to that. Any trying to do anything, trying to change myself or become something is going to take me further away from that, experientially at least. So an insight comes, or some understanding deepens, or you see yourself clearer, or you have a deeper meditation just suffused with peace and contentment. And of course you want that all the time, but what's the way to get that? Simply to invite it to come back. Just inviting an openness, a curiosity. Then what's it like to live as what I've just seen? What's it like to be that? A gentle invitation, even if it seems like we've lost it. We've lost what we've just seen, as so often seems to occur. Just to invite it to come back. And open invitation is going to leave room for it to kind of come back into our experience consciously then. Most of us, myself included, we tend to just rush off to try to do something to make that insight permanent. There's something I can do. I can meditate, I can self-inquire, I can do all of those things to get to some point, says mind, says ego. But we can be instead doing those things. We can be meditating, we can be inquiring, contemplating, to see, to prove, to remind ourselves where we're already at. So I'm not meditating to get to the self. I'm meditating to see I am already that, to experience it deeper and clearer. And most of my journey, for want of a better word, was really stepping out, back out of time and process, coming back to what I'd seen, honoring what I'd seen. I am already that. It is here. That there's nothing I can do to become that. I can only begin to allow it to shine through the body and mind clearer. And that's more of an allowing. That's more of a relaxing. That's more a curiosity, an inviting, an openness, a willingness. And it's not something that we can throw a lot of effort at, which is what we usually do as human beings. If I want to achieve something quickly, I'll throw twice as much effort at it in order to try and make it happen twice as quickly. But that doesn't work here, and I'm sure you've experienced that. In fact, it has the opposite effect. So what I'm talking about here is a softening, a deepening, an opening, a gentleness inside yourself, a calming, a quietness, a curiosity. What is it that's just been shown to me? I've seen it, but I'd like to see it again. It's not, I have to have this happen. It's more of a soft curiosity, an openness. It's lovely that I've seen that, and of course I'd like it back, but can I just gently invite it, knowing that there's nothing I can do to make it happen. There's nothing I can do which doesn't please my ego, but it does please myself. There's nothing I can do, but there is something, some way I can hold it, some openness that's going to invite it to kind of come to the forefront. There's nothing we can do to begin to live as what we already are. Meditation, satsang, self-inquiry, all of that are really just ways to slow down, to stop trying to get somewhere, to put the brakes on, and eventually come to a halt where we're still enough, as in lack of intention, Softest intention is simply to allow what's already here to emerge. That means bypassing all processes. So whatever you think you're doing to become more worthy of awakening is not going to work. Whatever you're doing to become more ready or ripe or devoted to awakening to the self is not going to work. All that would work if you were actually a separate being that could actually somehow make itself ready for this awakening. But if in fact you are already that you're trying to reach, how effective is a process, any process, going to be? Is it something that's going to happen over time? Or is it going to be able to reveal itself deeper in this very moment and deeper again in the next moment and deeper again in the next moment? And perhaps one of the hardest things for a human being to do is to open up like this, curious, to become curious again, to be interested in what's already here, interested as a habit, as a predominant way of being. We can have insights and epiphanies and all of that, but if we immediately take them and run with them somewhere, we're actually running away from reality in that moment. Any insight or epiphany is going to show you, any understanding that happens is going to show you clearer what you already are. When I really began to understand this, then the time began to shorten and the progress actually began to ironically increase. The deepening began to speed up exponentially. Because all I could ever control is how open and curious I was in this moment. I noticed right after an epiphany, an aha moment, an understanding, I was the most closed I've ever been, because I immediately took that and assumed that's where I needed to get to. Totally closed, cut off from any real insight in that, further insight in that moment, any further deepening. So what if meditation is more like a stance? It's more like a way of being. It's more like an attitude. It's more like something that we take on, something that we develop, a softening inside, beginning to include things, beginning to be curious about things, beginning to doubt everything that seems to be in our way. And can we develop this as a useful skill? Absolutely. Just for a moment here with me now, just for 10 minutes or so, let's see if we can, and we can call it meditation if we want to, but let's just stop trying to get somewhere. And most especially, let's stop trying to get something out of this satsang. Can we just take a breath and see if there's more here right now already about us? Just that willingness, that openness to kind of experience that. Just for a moment, no intentions about where I'm going, no plans spiritually for the future, at least. No awakening plans, no goals. Just an honoring here of this moment now that we're sharing. Just for a few moments, tasting how it feels to be deeply curious. What is this moment? What are you? And you don't even need any answers to that here in this curiosity. It's just nice to ask. Just nice to be open. Just nice to be curious. What does it feel like to have no place left to go, to be already finished? And yet allowing ever more peace, love, and joy through the mind and body into our life and relationships. Just an opening and allowing, not a becoming anymore. We don't need to do that anymore. Mind and body will keep doing that by themselves. Just a curiosity. What is actually here right now? What actually am I? No matter how much I've seen, can I just be curious here right now in this moment? And even if I haven't seen, can I just let go of frustration and desperation and just be curious here in this moment to whatever extent I can? What is actually waiting to be revealed for me? As if I just need to kind of open a door for all of this to pour through. And it's by this softening, by this relaxing, this openness. For as much as I know, I don't really know anything in this moment. Because of that, I'm open. There isn't anything we need to do here spiritually. We've crossed everything off our to-do list spiritually. We've done the work. It's just an allowing now. Allowing what is to shine through our mind and body. We don't need to earn it. We don't even need to receive it. We are it. Just softening and softening. Enjoying how it feels to be without a purpose or a plan for just a few moments. Just curious and quiet. What is reality? What am I? This curiosity is opening a doorway, opening it wide. Just enough to see, just enough to see and be. Just slowing down inside. There's no need to travel anywhere. Our long journey as a separate being is over, and beginning to allow the unfolding of seeing. It's just a switching over in our attitude. Allowing your body to relax in this curiosity, this openness, if it wants to. And mind may say that this isn't getting us anywhere, and it's okay. There's nowhere to get to. There's only this here. Inviting this, whatever this is, to reveal itself clearer, deeper, more intimately. Effortlessly, just allowing. Switching gently, gently into more openness. Can I be more open right now? Can I be more curious? This is an unfolding, an allowing. It's not a doing. A willingness to release, even if temporarily, all my processes, all my becoming, and just being. There's nowhere to run to. You're already perfect as you are. There's nothing you could become. We're just slowing down and allowing the contentment, the peace to catch up with us. If you want to slow right down, you can even just stop. I'm gonna stay right here and forevermore dive deeper into what I already am. Like a gift that keeps revealing itself ever clearer when we are still enough to notice. This gift is always being given, seeings, understandings. We don't need to earn it or be worthy of it. Just quiet enough, slow enough to receive it. Let's just enjoy this for a few moments. And if any insights occur, any understandings, any sensations, thoughts, any emotions, don't need to do anything with those. We can simply just let them happen. Welcome them. This may feel like a slowing down, but it's really just returning to your original state. Reminding yourself of your original nature. So whenever you feel ready, whenever you want to, you can open your eyes if they're closed. And just noticing that as we move into the next moment, the next section, we don't have to become a process again. We can just be here in this satsang. We can just participate without intention, without needing anything from it. Thank you. So I have a question that has been emailed in. I will read that first. If anybody would like to ask or share something, feel free to raise your hand on Zoom. This says, Dear Helen, related to my previous question, I still feel lost and a lot of fear and stuck. Am I approaching the void? Large parts of my ego seem to be falling away, and my personal will and personal drive is very, very low. So I seem stuck. I took your advice and reached out to the Satsang, and I am in contact with one member. My inner life and outer life seem to have collapsed, and I don't know what to do. The fear and feeling lost is very strong. Things that my ego would have done are just not there now. But this state I am in worries me. Am I going the right way? And is there something else I should be doing? What I try to do is sit with fear. I seem to be waiting, like I'm in a cocoon, so little personal drive to go in any direction. Does this make sense to you? Because I am just confused. Is this the void? Nothing seems to be happening. I don't really understand what's happening. There's a lot of stripping away. The difficult part is the fear. I just don't know what to do. I keep getting stripped down. What do I need to do? So this is in relation to someone who asked the question previously, and my advice I gave them at the time was to engage with the Sangha, to connect with people who are also studying this teachings and non-duality, awakening in general. So it does make sense what you've said, and it's great that you reached out and connected with someone, and I would urge you to do it again and again and again. If I was in your position right now, I wouldn't stop until I had 6 or 7 people at least that I could talk to about this and connect with, because it's going to speed up this particular part of your awakening, which has slowed right down. Talking about it with some other Sangha members is going to help give you self-reflection quicker. I know I said that before. I'm really happy that you've reached out, and I really would like you to do it again. In fact, this goes for everyone. There is, we have worldwide Sanghas over Zoom that anyone can join from anywhere to discuss these teachings and just to get to know each other. There is a Facebook group as well. If you are on Facebook, you can comment on any of the YouTube videos as well, and a community building that way too. Just whichever way you feel inclined to join in, I would urge you to do that. For it may seem something that's not going to help you see clearer what you really are, but it's powerful to connect with someone else. And as for the rest of what you've written, the thing that you're experiencing right now is not the self. It is not the state of freedom. You've called it here void. I don't really like that word. I mean, you may, and that's okay, but I don't really like the word void, because in terms of describing what we are, because the very nature of that word implies only insubstantiality and only intangibility, void of anything else, basically. And technically it's correct, yes, but it's been too often a term that's been used to imply a kind of a vacuum of nothing at all, a void. So what you're experiencing right now, and have been for a while, is not the self. It is some kind of halfway place we end up in. And I'm speaking from my own experience, when my idea of myself has begun to break down, but certain ideas about myself have not been challenged, have not been examined. So if you think of our egoic sense of self as like a building with scaffolding, structural support, we haven't taken away enough of that support for the light of the real self that we are to kind of begin to shine through. We were just doing that in the meditation. We were letting go of process, of any sense of trying to get somewhere. So whenever we're suffering at all, whether it's fear, as you've said here, or any kind of suffering, it's always because there's only one reason ever, and that's because we haven't clearly seen enough. There's still, our seeing hasn't been deep enough to penetrate the ideas, the remaining ideas of what we think we are. So what you're experiencing right now is some kind of no man's land that's in the middle of, I'm a separate being moving through my life, trying to get somewhere, and I am the infinite formless self. There's nothing for me to do, nowhere for me to get. There's still some ideas that have been held on to by you without realizing. And those ideas need to be examined, need to be really looked at. And this is what I'd like you to do with other Sangha members as well. Fear is saying that it's unsafe for you to proceed further forward, isn't it? That you're going to lose something. And even that is your experience right now, that you're going to lose something important in this awakening process. And it's the same for me, paralyzing fear, where everything I used to do as part of my separate sense of self had fallen away. But this powerful idea that my separate sense of self had to disappear, be annihilated, crushed, or destroyed in order to allow awakening to occur was paralyzing. It was terrifying. And it was only really when I began to question that idea. What if I don't have to lose anything here? What if it isn't going to be giving away this old sense of self and receiving this new, greater sense of self? What if I can keep this here, this sense of self, also get an upgrade into my recognition of my infinite nature? And if at any time we feel like we are having to sacrifice something important to us, then there's always an idea that some kind of thing is going to have to be lost. Something is going to be given away. Something is going to be lost in the process, is the idea that causes fear. I'm going to have to give away everything that makes me me. This idea is terrifying. Therefore, we stall out in our shifting over of our identity. You're not becoming the self. You're not moving into it. You're not even beginning to embody it. That's all happening to the mind and body, not you. The only thing that's happening here is a shift over of who you know yourself to be. So I am that formless infinite reality, and I'm also appearing as this sense of a separate being, not an actual thing, just a sense. So recognizing the fastest way out of this, because I remember how awful it is, that recognition, what I'm experiencing now isn't reality. The fastest way out of that then is what is actual reality. And do these problems that I seem to have still hold true in that? Do I have to sacrifice anything? Do I have to lose anything important? And what's it like if that's not true? What if this is just an unfolding that's going to add to, not replace, but add to what I think I am, what I know myself to be? Hasn't the infinite self always been here? And why would it suddenly need this separate sense of self to disappear? Can we not experience ourselves both ways? I strongly urge you just to look at these last few remaining ideas. And if you're not feeling peace, contentment that begins to increase each day, it is not the void as you're putting it, it's not the self. It is still some partially deconstructed thought form of yourself. So I want to just encourage you and say well done for the steps you've already taken, and for really listening and applying what was said before, and just encouraging you to keep looking at what reality actually is. Don't get stuck in this halfway place any longer. It isn't very pleasant, I remember. So if anyone else would like to ask a question or share anything or any insights or epiphanies, now is a good time. Now is the only time, in fact. Feel free to raise your hand. Savitur, yeah. DJ Savi. I'll stop doing that now.
Can you hear me all right?
I can.
Thank you for that, Helen. That was a really good satsang. Just beforehand, I had a really clear seeing that over 40 years ago, I had this amazing seeing. I recognized it as my own, like a veil has been lifted. And straight away I thought, I'm going to find this. And this,
there it is, right there, right?
There it is right there. And it was only today that I thought, wow, I've always been this. And it's like trying to sit down when you're already sitting down. It was like that feeling. And what the Satsang was really apt on good timing anyway, and beautiful to come to that curiosity sense rather than a searching per se. But over the 40 years, in my quest to find this, I've come across teachers and pointings and to hear that message now, is there a preparation? Was there preparation for that, to hear that then? And as you were saying, answering that question, it's like during that time, it was removing slowly but surely the scaffolding that was built up in my conditioning and that sense of a separate self.
Yeah.
And I'm just really saying thank you for that. That's really it's like aligning with your teachings very nicely. Thank you.
Oh, wonderful. It's it's one of those paradoxes, isn't it? That the very first time I see what I am, I see what I am. But can I accept that, or do I go running straight back to a process and my old idea of myself in some way? And we all do it, of course. And then over that time, something is getting more and more frustrated with trying to get somewhere, and more in love with just being where I am right now, or what I am right now. And at some point, it can be the smallest moment where it just kind of shifts. Like, I don't really want to chase after anything anymore. I just don't want to. And it's just a kind of, okay, something like that, a quiet thing inside. It wasn't any fireworks for me or anything like that. It just, I could keep chasing, trying to get somewhere forever and never arrive. Or I could choose to just be here more.
It's also through your teachings that through the contemplations that I was starting to ask, well, who's trying to get it?
Yeah.
And it kind of it changes the paradigm completely, because it kind of started the question, well, what is that? What is that sense of a separate self? And it's a kind of a really gentle way of kind of seeing and being it.
It's just whichever way we could call it, contemplation, or what I realized it's also surrender. Through contemplation, I was able to just surrender all my trying to get somewhereness. Whichever way we do that, it works, doesn't it? It slows us down. Or we can do
it. I tried surrender. I tried surrender in the past, but it wasn't ego surrender.
Right. I'm going to do this surrender thing.
I give it all up.
Yeah. I'm going to be the best surrenderer ever.
That's right.
Yeah.
But I still want me there.
Yeah. I'm going to be the one who's left empty at the end with nothing else. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
out of my
now,
humility.
Of yeah. Yeah. Apart from my pride, I'll keep that. But we don't realize, of course, we're doing that. But yeah. So this was kind of, I realized it was an accidental way to kind of slow down. It just started happening despite my other intentions, and it gathers pace then, doesn't it, in a way? Paradoxical, I know, but to the point where you come to some realization, I've always been this, and all I can do is see it clearer. That's really what all of this is about, really, isn't it? Just seeing it clearer.
Thank you, Helen.
Thanks for sharing. Appreciate it. Thank you. Lovely. Would anyone else like to share anything or ask a question? Okay, we will leave it there for today then. Thank you. Namaste.